So welcome back to Track Us Down. Our channel is all about retiring early, moving abroad, and living a better second half of life. And living a better second half of life doesn't have to be here in Portugal or here on Madeira where we make our base. It can be anywhere. So we're very excited to have Josh from Expats Everywhere on our channel today, talking about their experience and their expertise in helping expats live anywhere or everywhere. So welcome.
Doug, thank you so much. I really appreciate you allowing me to be on your podcast. Let's do this.
Yeah, I'm very excited. There's a lot of information I think that our viewers would really like to hear. I think our audience is primarily people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And it's people who are maybe starting to think about moving on to what we call a better second half of life. And that can be, what we mean by that is anything after retirement. It can be in your 60s. It could even be, we have people here in their 70s, or it could be, if you're really early, it could be in your 40s. But after you've kind of contributed to your workplace, or you've raised your family and you're ready for something different, that was all your first half of life. And we say it's okay to do something different and exciting in your second half of life. So that can mean a lot of different things to different people. And I think our audience would have a lot to learn from you, because I think you and Kaylee have been doing this for a long time, from what I understand.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that we're retired, but to consider the idea of like living our second half of life, I guess it depends on how long life is. You know what I mean? Because we lived our first half of our life, if you will, in the U.S. We're both from different parts of the U.S., although it's East Coast. So if there was some sort of like subcultural East Coast, West Coast mentality, we're more on the East Coast. But we grew up very differently. And we had a little bit of people in our lives and travel experiences that inspired us to consider traveling abroad and also living abroad. And we did that after our first half of life, let's say, in our 20s, living in the U.S. and just looking at things like, you know what, there's this whole world out there. There's this big world out there. Let's go see it. And we just tried to organize our life in a way that we could do that. And long may it continue. I don't see us moving back to the U.S. For retirement years. We actually don't even talk about retirement. We don't even know what that would look like. I think if we got to a financial position where we didn't need to work, we would still be doing something.
I agree. And I think, the face of retirement has changed. And we often say we should retire the word retire, because even for us, even though we're technically retired in a traditional or conventional type of way, we are still working. We still feel like we have something to contribute and things to learn. So we're still working in that sense. It's kind of a soft retirement in a sense. And when we say second half of life, it's kind of tongue in cheek as well. We've had people say to us, I'm in my third quarter of life or in my fourth quarter of life, and just kind of spin it off in those kind of ways. So that's why we say whatever it means for you, because it can mean so many different things to different people. So tell me about Expats Everywhere, and how did Expats Everywhere start out?
Yeah. So Expats Everywhere is a channel that got its start really based on living abroad and moving to different countries with the intent to work in those places, and give people an idea of what it would be like to go through the visa process to work in those places. And we've had a couple iterations of what the channel looks like. The channel really, really started to get traction whenever Kaylee and I turned the camera on ourselves instead of outwardly to the different guests that we had on the channel and talking to them about where they were living. And we turned it on ourselves in our move to Portugal. And we started to get an audience that was really interested in Portugal. We were one of the first couple of channels to take a deeper dive into Portugal and what it's like living in Portugal as a foreigner. I think we're very soon going to really get back to kind of the heart of the foundation of the channel, if you will, which is talking about everywhere. We do have a second channel called Expats Everywhere Explores, where in a very formulaic way, we break down different cities and countries, and we're starting to add more videos to that channel. But we'll see what it's like on the main channel and exactly how we get back out to talking about the world in a broader sense. But funny enough, we launched the channel in between a move from Saudi Arabia and Singapore. We were living, living. I use that loosely. We were staying in Canada. So we were actually renting an Airbnb from a French Canadian lady in just outside of Ottawa, Gatineau.
Yep.
How do I say it?
Gatineau. Yep.
Yep. So we were just across the river. That's where we launched the channel. So Canada is near and dear to our hearts for sure.
It's in your roots.
It is. It is absolutely in our origin story. So we filmed a bunch of videos while living in Saudi Arabia, because if anybody knows compound life in Saudi Arabia, it can be very boring. People tend to either get hobbies or go stir crazy. We decided to take the positive route and get a hobby. And we started to film all of the interesting people that were living on the compound and the places they were living in or had lived in, the cities that they had been to. We started to log, or let's say bank a bunch of these video files. And then when we were in Canada, we went through and edited them and started to upload them to YouTube. It was a side hustle for the next 4 years or so while we were living in Singapore. And then we started to see kind of fruits of our labor, just the consistency, putting out a video out every week, once a week. And we could see that there's possibly some revenue that we could make, and we could potentially become full-time creators. And it's just, gone from strength to strength from those days.
Well, you guys certainly have the experience to provide that sort of information. You've been doing this for how many years now?
Yeah, so we moved in 2009. Our first move was to Spain, and for me, it was sight unseen. I had very little travel experience, but I had traveled to Europe, just not Spain, and moved to Madrid. What a busy city and crazy time that was to move there. And Kaylee got a job as an au pair with a family, so her settling in period was a little different than mine. I felt a little more isolated because I was in the city center. She was living outside of the city with this family. I had to very quickly make friends. So we both had these experiences where we were gaining knowledge of what it would be like, or what it is like really, moving abroad, moving away from family, moving away from what is normal. She and I were just dating at the time, so it wasn't super serious at that point. We weren't even engaged. But yeah, we quickly burned through 2 years of our time in Spain, and we kind of looked at where next. And Asia was a complete unknown to us. Neither one of us had touched the continent, and it was like, let's go there. That was 2011, I think.
So still quite a while. I mean, we're talking almost 15 years ago that you guys have been doing this and being out into the world. And what was that experience like? Americans like to travel, but they historically have, they really like their country.
Yes.
And very patriotic. So what did your friends, your family think of you guys leaving and moving abroad and not coming back? And how did you cope with that?
I think we went through some serious phases. And I think a lot of people get us wrong in the sense that we've lived abroad for 15 years or thereabouts. And they think we're not patriots, but we are. We're very patriotic. Like,
totally.
Red, white, and blue, man. Like we love the States. We look at the U.S. very differently. I think over our experience living in other continents and cultures and countries, we've started to appreciate what's very good about the U.S. and where the U.S. is very deficient. So initially when we moved, I think that my parents were both equally excited for me and scared for me as well. Maybe my older sister had the most difficult time because we had grown quite close. She's 3.5 years older than me. And, we're in our 20s at this point, and we had grown very close with each other. And I would see her and her family on a near daily basis. I would go over to her house for dinner. I was a single guy, so I would do that. And it wasn't until our third move where we stopped getting the question of, when are you moving home? When are you coming home?
Yeah.
And our parents realized that home was the next place we were going to move to abroad.
Right.
And home was where Kaylee and I, because at that point we were married, wherever Kaylee and I were. As far as coping, it wasn't super difficult because there was this transition period that I had where I had stepped away from kind of my university friends. I had just started a career, and there was that in between where I hadn't really gotten deep relationships with my new colleagues. So I didn't have to explain much to them most of my college friends were kind of getting scattered around at least the East Coast, if not the whole country, and some of them abroad because I had quite a few international friends in college. That was easy, I think. And I think the same would be true for Kaylee. I think that she was making a clean break from university friends around the same time. So it was more family. Virtually every time Kaylee's mom and Kaylee said goodbye in the first 5 years, there were tears at the airport. I mean, that just happened every single time.
I think that, you know, people come into your life, like friends or colleagues, they say for a reason or a season, right? So you enjoy them while it's the right time. Maybe it was for a reason or it was the right season. But I think, you know, moving out into the world, you guys have started a new season. And whether that's in Singapore or whether that's in Saudi Arabia, you get those experiences, people come into your lives, and it's okay that you or they move on from there. And it's pretty interesting. I think a lot of viewers, a lot of listeners would be very interested in hearing your experience, because I think from what we've seen, when we've talked to people, they're worried about leaving their family, their extended family behind, and just kind of getting it across. It's a learning curve for all of us, and it's not really leaving them behind, especially, I mean, a lot has changed even in the 15 years that you guys have been out in the world with FaceTime or, you know, it's so easy to talk face to face with somebody. And if you think about it, if you were living in the same city as them or the same state or province or even the same country, how often would you see them anyways? Whereas you might get much more meaningful visitation now when you go to see them or they come to see you or you talk to them face to face. Would you agree with that?
It has 100%. It's made a massive difference. So to give people context, we were living in Spain. Forgive me for not remembering the year. It was either 2010 or 2011, where we were on a flight back to the US, and it was either Delta or United, one of those American Airlines. And we were sitting there, and the tray table in the airplane had the little Android avatar on it. And in Spain at this point was a little behind what was happening in North America in terms of tech. Everybody had flip phones or like not brick phones, but the smaller,
bigger cell phones.
Yeah, I mean, or just the smaller cell phones that had no bells and whistles. You know, had like a 4-function calculator on it. Smartphones didn't exist. And I asked the kid, he must have been 16, sitting next to me. I was like, "What is this?" And he said, "It's Android." And I was like, "All right, what's that mean?" And he looked at me like I was from another planet. He's like, "It's a smartphone." And I was like, "Cool. What's a smartphone?" And it just blew his mind, you know, but it was like literally as smartphones were kind of coming out and they just weren't in Spain yet. Or if they were, then it was just among people that were wealthy. Now, how did that connect with our lives? Well, when we were living in Spain, we had to be intentional about using Skype because that was the only thing that we knew at the time where we could make these international calls affordably and potentially, depending on the internet connection, see someone face to face and have like FaceTime. My dad really struggled with this, and, you know, touching back on like the kind of human relationship or interpersonal relationship aspect of moving abroad. My dad was a workaholic. He would just engross himself into his work and just kind of forget about some of the other things that he had to do. He had so much of his mind wrapped around work and that planning of his life. It would be like weeks and sometimes months where we wouldn't speak to each other. And it oftentimes wouldn't be for my lack of trying. It was something weird with him with the time difference. So he just couldn't wrap his head around like that there's a 5-hour time difference. So like he didn't know when to call me, when it would be appropriate. When the reality is like anytime he can call me, like I'd love to talk to him. But what we had to do is we just had to establish like on this day at this time every week, we're just going to call. We'll spend 15 minutes or an hour talking to each other, but we just had to set that time. Once we did that, our relationship really, really flourished. But before that, there was a lot of tension between us. So technology's now closed the gap considerably because it's just so easy with FaceTime. It's just ridiculous. Like it's just like making a phone call now. It's not getting onto Skype and hearing the connection, the beep, 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 dial-up and all that crap. So we've seen technology in the past 15 years in terms of telecom for interpersonal relationships close the gap so much that it should no longer be an excuse for people. Because like you said,
agree.
people will live in two different cities, not see each other physically, but they can stay in touch, no problem.
I agree. And, and this technology, it's still been around for, at least that amount of time. I can remember we were in 2011, I think we were in China for a month, and we FaceTime my parents, and we're able to turn the phone around and show them, or the iPad, whatever we had, and show them where we were. And that was FaceTime, and that was back in 2011. So, and it just keeps getting better and better. I don't know what's next. So getting back to you and Kaylee, like, you were just two young surfer dudes who struck out on a vacation and ended up living van life and then trying to make a go of it. You two are teachers, from what I understand, and are educated. Just touch on that, and how has that kind of informed some of the choices and some of the viewpoints you have since you've been living abroad over the last 15 years?
Yeah, so I think it's certainly given us a lens into the local places, like the local population of the places we've lived in. Admittedly, we kind of started teaching because it was the path of least resistance when considering living abroad and needing a job. I think it's easier for people that, in a way, people that are just retiring. It's like you're bringing your own income to a new place. There are a lot of retirement visas in a variety of countries around the world. But when you need a job that's in a specific country, it can be a little more challenging. And we found that the teaching career offered us the ability to find work in a variety of interesting countries around the world. And that was really what motivated us in the beginning to start teaching. Now, there's something about both Kaylee and I where our personalities are such that we want to excel at everything we do. I think it's probably our sports background. Like, both of us were athletes in university, and we just want to do well, be the best. If we're a part of a teaching cohort and there's an award to win as like top teacher, we're gunning for it. That's just how we're built. Yeah, it's
that is
literally
a great mindset.
I think what ended up happening over the first couple of years of us teaching is we looked at it as a means to an end. We had a visa to live in an interesting place,
but everybody has to have a means to an end, right? So that's makes sense,
right? And then we got to a point where it was like, well, if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get good at it. So we started to look at, like, what are the next steps to reach the next levels? Because in the international teaching career game, there are levels to the game that will get you better jobs, paid better benefits, better locations, everything, right? And we just started to climb our way up that ladder to the point where we were at a very good job in Singapore, making a decent wage, not even the best in Singapore, but we really liked the school. And we were at a point where life was pretty comfortable. 4 years in Singapore flew by. We could have done more. So it was an awesome experience.
So just talking about that, as we get into kind of what you guys are doing now with expats everywhere, where all have you guys taught leading up to now?
So we've taught in Spain, although Kaylee was an au pair. So I taught in Spain. She was a nanny, a live-in nanny. Then we moved to South Korea, taught there. She taught in a primary school. I taught in a high school my first year, university my second year. Then Saudi Arabia, we both taught in university, and it was in a preparatory deanship that this university had, which is basically like the first year of university for Saudi students. They need to get their English levels up to a certain proficiency where they can take the majority of their classes in English versus in Arabic. We taught basically 18 to 20-year-olds English. Kaylee was on the women's campus. I was on the men's campus because there was
separated. Okay.
Yes. So that was fun. We learned a lot culturally there. And then we moved to we moved to those great jobs in Singapore where Kaylee was primarily in primary or elementary, and then I had middle school and a little bit of elementary sprinkled in there.
So that's fascinating. You guys have been a lot of really interesting places and contributed to those societies in a lot of interesting ways and met a lot of interesting people. And I want to touch on a couple things there. What was the most interesting place that you've taught in, and why, to start with?
I think the most interesting might have been Spain, because I had such a fun mix of co-teachers and students. I got to experience basically all age groups, age demographics, in my 2 years there. So I could ask a lot of like really fun questions and I could kind of see what the young minds in Spain were thinking. I could get a glimpse into what the high school kids were thinking and what was cool to them. And then my coworkers I had a big variety of coworkers, whereas in Korea, the relationships were a little colder, I was
going to say it must have been quite different culturally between South Korea and Spain or even Singapore.
Yeah, huge. So Singapore, because it was an international school, the culture on campus felt a bit more North American. We had both American and Canadian at admin.
Okay.
And it wasn't that the nationality of all the students were North American. We had a massive mix. I can't even remember how many countries were represented on campus, but it was extreme considering that our school size was pretty small, relatively small. But the atmosphere on campus felt much more North American than it did Asian, in the way that Korea felt very Asian. But Singapore as a country is known for being like Asia Light, is the name for it.
And where would you like to go back to most of all those countries?
Singapore, without a doubt. I think that the orderliness of Singapore and the predictability of things that you like to be predictable in your life, for example, the weather, safety, interactions that you might have on the street, things were quite predictable. The language, one of their 4 languages, national languages, is English, and that's the dominant language. So that was easy, right?
Right.
Not that we're looking to take the easy way out, because I don't think people that live...
Does it sound like you guys ever have?
Yeah, you know what I mean?
For the challenge.
Yeah. We're not looking to take the easy way out. But Singapore was awesome. We had incredible friends, both in work and out of work, which made a big difference. And I think that might be a thing that we're lacking here, because we don't have that work environment living in Portugal that we did in Singapore. So we're lacking that here.
Okay. And I want to talk about that more, because you guys are expats everywhere. You have a lot of unique experience in quite a few different countries. For us, we try and offer inspiration to live that better second half of life, maybe retire, not go to a second job and move abroad. Whereas you guys have that experience in different countries and what it's like not only to live there, but how to get there. What led you to Portugal to begin with, and why Porto?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great question. The short answer is that we like it more than Spain. So
I've heard that from many others.
When we lived in Madrid, Porto was one of the first places that we visited. We weren't making very much money in Spain, and we were looking at, where were the cheap flights to? And there was a direct flight from Madrid to Porto. I can't even remember how much we paid back then. It might have been 25 euros round trip, like EasyJet, Ryanair, one of those two.
Yeah.
So
still have some of those deals sometimes.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we could afford that. And at the time, hotels were super cheap. So it was an easy trip for us to make. And we arrived in Porto and we're like, man, this is like kind of similar to Spain. The language is a little different, but the people are like way more laid back and nicer, friendlier. So we dug the city of Porto and felt like it had this magic feeling. Yeah. So we also traveled to Lisbon, didn't like it as much, traveled down to Algarve. Albufeira is where we stayed, and it was okay. But Portugal as a whole, we preferred over Spain, or at least Madrid. And we thought, one day we're going to live here. And, it wasn't until the D7 visa, the creation of the D7 visa, that we really had an opportunity to, because I don't think, as we looked at it, I don't think that we would have taken a job in the teaching industry here in Portugal because the wages were so low. Going back to the whole like gamifying the leveling up on the teaching career, Portugal's not it. Portugal would be a step back in the international school game. And if we were still doing that, I don't think that we would have chosen to teach here. But the D7 visa gave us the opportunity as Americans to move here and sustain ourselves financially.
Right. And Portugal has kind of been, over the last few years, been kind of the hotspot go-to for a lot of people looking to leave their country for whatever reason, whether it's crime rate, extreme weather, or politics. And I think Portugal has offered kind of a haven for people, in addition to the low cost of living and a laid-back lifestyle. And I'm sure you're seeing that a lot too with the people that you interact with through your channel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people will look at Spain first, and then they'll find Portugal as well. And if they're doing a good job on the research, they'll start to make comparisons. And at the time that I think both of us moved, really, the clear winner was Portugal in terms of if you're being really analytic, you're not getting emotions into it. It was more favorable taxes. The threshold for the visa was lower. The amount of time in country that you needed for citizenship, the fact that you could be dual citizen with Canada or US and Portugal versus Canada, US and Spain. There's just a multitude of factors that I mentioned NHR, so you had a favorable tax regime that allowed people to have a 10-year tax holiday period in Portugal. Spain didn't have that. Now with that removed, that's kind of a wash. They're pretty similar. But I think it was because a lot of people were looking at Spain, and then they also started to see Portugal as an option, and Portugal just became the clear winner for many people. Things are shifting a little bit, but not as drastic as I think maybe some hope.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of leveled out a bit, right?
Yeah.
People, it's still a hot place, and it's still a great place to make that second half of life, or
Absolutely.
Even before your first half of life, if you're looking to have a change up and to work abroad, which a lot of people can do nowadays with the whole remote working scenarios that have come up. With you guys have a daughter?
Yes, Spain gave us a ton of memories, and Spain gave us the idea for our daughter's name, Valencia. So our daughter's name is Valencia. It was the
beautiful city,
amazing city. So Kaylee and I traveled to Valencia several months after moving there as boyfriend and girlfriend, if you will. And it was the city where I first told Kaylee that I love her. And therefore, it's always been a place that has special meaning for us. We love the name of Valencia. So Valencia is 4 years old. She's at a preschool. She started it when she was 2. We basically have like 1, maybe 2 years if we want to, before we need to get her into a proper school. They have to start when they're 6 years old, but we could technically start her when she's 5 as she's turning 6. So we'll see what happens. I think we're leaning towards 1 more year of the preschool she's in now, and then transitioning her to a private school that's a Portuguese private school.
And having the experience teaching in international schools and seeing the school systems internationally, what are your hopes for her as far as going to an international school, and how do you expect things to be different for her development-wise compared to somebody just going to school in Canada or in the US, from your experience, what you've seen and what you've taught in?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about the school that we're looking at for her is it has 2 pathways. One pathway is the Portuguese path. The other pathway is the international path. So it's like a hybrid international private school. We spoke with the admissions person about it, and we feel like it would be best for her to continue to work on her Portuguese language skills as she's getting plenty of English at home, and have her in the Portuguese side whenever she does start. And then at some point, possibly in preparation for if and when we leave Portugal, that she switches over to the international side and starts to get on that curriculum, because curriculums are different. And once you get your kid into a specific curriculum, it tends to be best to stay in that curriculum because it's an easier move for the kid. And we've kind of seen this played out as we were international school teachers with a variety of students coming into our class. The ones that didn't have to worry about the curriculum change and that shift tended to be the ones that were a bit freer to just start making friends faster and getting themselves more comfortable relationship-wise, versus trying to wrap their head around, the learning methods or the Common Core standards, whatever you want to call it, for the actual school itself. So I think that's going to be our approach, and I think that would be my advice to parents. I know we're not the only ones that kind of preach this method as well. There's another expat couple here that has moved around quite a bit, that has approached the education for their kids in the same way. So yeah, that would be the thing.
Definitely be a concern for people moving
100%.
from, as far as if they're moving with young children or going to have children abroad, because how are their kids going to be educated? And you guys have seen it firsthand and can speak to it. And you have Any reservations about that? Do you wish you'd done it otherwise, or is she going to be like the most fantastic internationally educated person going forward?
I'm really glad that you asked me this question. Our experience, and it's a little limited being in Singapore 4 years, but our experience, the quality of kid that comes out at the age 17, 18, whenever they graduate, is a cut above the average kid in the US. Like the kids that we've stayed in touch with have just gone on to do stuff, like real stuff, between being 18 and 24. It's unbelievable the way that they've gone out and impacted the world. And by the numbers, it just doesn't happen that way in a general high school in the US. When you have a kid that's coming out of an international school, a quality one, that goes and, finishes their education, their tertiary education, wherever, England, US, Canada, and then they go out and they get a job or whatever, they're just a cut above. It's crazy. So I
That's
hope
a
that
fascinating
as well.
That's a fascinating insight that you have there, because I think a lot of people, that would be something that they'd be concerned about if they were moving with their kids. So I think you could put a lot of people's fears at ease there. Would you do anything differently, or do you have any regrets about doing that? Or are you happy on the path that you guys are on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously she's 4, so let's not heap too much pressure on her. But I think I don't see us having any regrets or wanting to do anything different. I think the next decision for us is, does she start not this coming year, but the next year in the preschool, private preschool, whatever, or do we wait 2 years? I think we're just going to wait one. There is a financial consideration with that, but it's not huge.
And I was thinking not so much pressure on her, but pressure on you guys as parents to do the right thing. And
I don't know. There's no manual, is there?
Right. No, I think you guys are doing great. You're so inspirational. What's next for you guys? I mean, from what I understand, Portugal's not going to be the end. There's more to come, right? What's the next big thing? And what big things are you working on right now that you want to talk about?
Yeah, thanks. So Kaylee and I have a rule, and we realized that this needed to be a rule about the time that we started talking about leaving Korea. And the rule is, don't talk about where next unless there's a problem. The reason that that's a rule is because when there's a where next, we kind of get blinders on, and going back to our competitiveness, we figure out how to make that move happen. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is changing in our life. We don't like this. Where next? And then we start discussing that where next. And literally we'll be like, all right, we can go here, here, and here. How do we do it? And then we dig into the immigration process and figure it all out. And then we end up making a move to one of those places. We're not at a point in our lives in Portugal where that needs to be considered. So we're just not going to talk about where next. The things that we have going on coming up, and these are things that are going to root us here in Portugal for longer, and we're super happy about that, is we have a building development that we're doing in the city of Porto. And we have just, let's say, brokered a deal to do a second development. So we're not even done with the first one. We're already working on the second one. Real estate's a big interest of both of ours, but mainly mine. And I'm really excited to apply the things that I've learned in the US could potentially be beneficial here in Portugal and in Porto. And I'm super excited about this real estate first development for sure that we've got going on. And it's early days with the second one. So
you have expats everywhere. You have Expat Explorers, which is more travel-based.
Yep.
Expat Everywhere Explorers, which is more travel-based and location-based around the world. Yes. The building one.
This one's called Let's Get Building with Josh and Kaylee.
And you have a podcast.
Yes.
And any other platforms that you're on that you're reaching people on?
We post personal stuff on Facebook and Instagram. But in terms of real content that we're producing, weekly we show up on the main channel. Periodically we show up on the secondary channel, which is Expats Everywhere Explorers. The videos are just now rolling out for Let's Get Building with Josh and Kaylee. We have our second episode coming out, and then we have the YouTube podcast channel and the podcast itself. So, wow. Yes.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot going on.
That's a lot. It's too much.
Good for you guys. So say I'm an expat, I want to be an expat. I am living in Canada, I'm living in the US, I'm living somewhere, and I want to live everywhere or anywhere. And I reach out to you. What can I expect? What kind of information can I get from you and help me along my journey to get wherever it is that I want to move?
I think initially when people land on the main channel or Expats Everywhere Explorers, they're finding kind of general information about how to get started or give people some ideas on what it would be like in a certain place. And I think it's always really important to have multiple sources of information when you're doing your research. Don't just go somewhere for like a one-stop shop, if you will. If you're talking about just gathering information, gather from different perspectives, right? Because our perspective is different than your perspective. We're in different stages of life. We have different life experiences and all that. But if people engage us on in an email or more personally, they're going to get a response back, which isn't always the case, right? When you write people on YouTube, they'll definitely get a response back. But the only way that we're going to be open to helping people is if they want to live in one of the countries that we've lived in. Because we tried this whole business of doing consultations with people when it was places that we hadn't lived in. And it was a ton of work, a ton of research to aggregate all of the data, all the research they should be doing. Like we would do that for them and put it together and then deliver it and answer questions. Because essentially, after moving so many times as we've done and immigrating to different places, we found patterns where basically the immigration process is the same, and then where there are variances depending on what country or continent you're going to, or if you're going with a job or without a job. So we would fill in those gaps for people, basically. Nice. So if people reach out to us, I mean, that's what they can expect. If they're looking for a country that we've lived in, we'll engage with them and do that kind of one-on-one. If it's not, then we'll find someone that they can connect with that can help them specifically.
I have a couple last questions here for you.
Yep.
A couple fun ones. What's on your bucket list still? I mean, you've lived in these different countries and worked in these different countries, and you're living in Portugal now. What's one thing that comes to mind that's on your bucket list?
Straight away is Antarctica, because it's the last continent for us to touch, and Northern Lights. I'd be very curious if Kaylee would come up with both these answers, but I know that they're on her bucket list. I just don't know if she would think of them straight away. But those are the first two that pop to mind.
And you're close by. I mean, I think you can go to somewhere like Denmark or Norway and see some pretty amazing Northern Lights as well. So you're not too far away from that to begin with. Antarctica is a little bit more, a bit further away, but there's some great exploration to be had there. And the last thing, our channel for us, again, mostly retiring and living a better second half of life. And retirement, again, can be a soft retirement. But for us, it started off as a full retirement. For you guys, you've already moved abroad. You're already raising your kids abroad. That is part of who you are. What would the second half of life and retirement look like for you guys down the road? What do you foresee that being, since you're already kind of living that retirement lifestyle in a sense?
Honestly, I think more of the same. Kaylee and I are obsessed with traveling. I think we would just continue to have that desire to see different places. Right now, where we have a 4-year-old and we travel with her, we're a little, let's say, conservative when it comes to the places that we pick to go. Whereas when we didn't have to consider her and her well-being, we were pretty wild. Like we would go to places that were off the beaten path, potentially dangerous. Once she's out of the nest, we would start to tick those countries off the box. I don't think our goal is to see every country in the world. I think there's some places that we wouldn't be as interested in, and it would literally be to tick it off a list. And I don't think that that's necessarily a great reason to travel to places. I think there has to be some sort of curiosity about the culture or learning. And maybe we'll come around to that and have that desire to, want to learn what Botswana is like, or, one of those places.
The plan, it's not to move back to the US and sit on a porch in a rocking chair and say, you know what, we did it. That's, it's over. And then you guys are going to keep going and keep doing what you're doing, which is so inspirational for everybody else, and for them to get over that fear.
Yeah, I don't know where that rocking chair would be, but I can't imagine it'd be in the US. I don't know what city or state it would be in. It's not the common thing that we hear in terms of, I can't afford to retire in the US because it's too expensive or da-da-da-da. I don't think about it like that. It's just, I'm not interested in living long-term in the US anymore. I find living abroad far too interesting, and there are too many other places that I could go. And remember, red, white, and blue, man. July 4th, my favorite holiday. I love the US, but it's not where I want to live.
It's been absolutely inspirational for our listeners having you on our channel today. I really want to thank you for spending the time with us here today. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want listeners in this kind of genre, people who want to live abroad or retire abroad or work abroad, that you think it's important for them to hear that maybe I didn't ask you about?
I mean, I just hope that people, if they have that desire to move abroad, don't be scared. Like, you can do it. There's always the path back. Like, you don't have to burn the ships, although it's great to burn the ships at time to get things done, but you don't have to burn the ships. You can move abroad. If you don't like it, say, all right, we tried, we lived, for a year or two in such and such place. It wasn't for us. Maybe try a different country, or you can go back to your home country. But if you have a little bit of that little like burning desire, that feeling like I need to have this experience, have the experience. You won't regret it. You really won't.
100%. Nothing's done that can't be undone. And you're going to be, like you said, a better person for it, just having had that experience.
100%.
I think we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you so much for spending the time. You can catch a little bit more of Mike and I from Track Us Down here on Expats Everywhere with Josh, where we talk about our experience and our inspiration for retiring early and moving abroad and living that better second half of life. So check out that episode on Expats Everywhere podcast. And as always, check back in and track us down.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.